Thank you, Niamh, and good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us today during these interesting times. And what an incredible couple of weeks it's been. A new government, a new Prime Minister, and a new head of state, all within a couple of days, and some truly historical events over the past couple of weeks, culminating in the state funeral yesterday. Something I think none of us can say we've ever experienced before. I'm just delighted that we were able to go ahead today and in our own small way, as part of our event, being able to pay our respects to Her Majesty the Queen. So thank you to all of you for helping us make that tribute, and for the team for putting together that very powerful audio, which I think really captured the mood. And I think that's something else that radio has been brilliant at over the last couple of weeks. So, my name's Matt Payton. I'm Chief Executive at Radiocentre, and I was very privileged to take on this role and delighted to take on this role in July this year. Change not quite as momentous as some of the other ones we've been seeing recently, though. And my job today is just to make a few opening remarks about what we've got coming up, what's on the agenda, how that all fits together, and how that reflects some of the really exciting developments happening in radio and audio. And also briefly touch on how Radiocentre is going to be evolving as part of this. So firstly, looking at today's lineup, Niamh's touched on it already, but we've got a brilliant and very broad range of speakers. I think even we've been describing it as a fairly eclectic mix, which is what we like to do. But I can assure you there's method in our madness, because each of these sessions speaks to at least one of our three overarching themes. Not only that radio and audio is booming overall, thank you, what we've coined as a sonic boom, I think that was a sonic boom, but also that there's significant evidence of radio's effectiveness and a real role for audio in the current debate around audience attention. So we'll be hearing from Global, we'll be hearing from Mediacom, and Radiocentre's Planning Director, Mark Barber, on those issues. Also that the evolution and innovation in audio is creating more opportunities than ever for audiences and for advertisers. So we'll have sessions from the Magic Radio Breakfast team, from Lawrence from Radio Player, and our audio partners to address this issue. And also that radio's power and positivity and its trusted role is something that is more attractive, I think, to all of our stakeholders than it's ever been, whether you are advertisers, politicians, or pop stars. And as the new CEO of Radiocentre, I've obviously been spending quite a lot of time thinking about these issues and applying my analytical brain to whether we're doing all we can to address them and deliver on our remit. And the good news is, I actually think that overall, our remit remains really clear. We're here to make the case as powerfully as we can for advertisers to invest in radio and audio, built on that effectiveness evidence, and to communicate radio's key role as part of the broader and evolving audio world, and to help shape and influence regulation so that radio can grow and unleash that power and potential of positivity. And what's more, I think we start from a very strong position in addressing all of these points. I think our foundations actually are really solid, and so is our sense of purpose. And Radiocentre itself is made up of highly committed, talented, and respected group of people. And it's a really exciting time for us to be in the radio and audio business, probably the most exciting and innovative time that there's ever been. And we're really proud to represent some fantastic businesses operating in this space, from the large national groups to the local and regional stations. So, what's the issue and the challenge that we face? Well, the challenge as I see it is building on the achievements of the past, but reinterpreting and developing our mission to ensure that it's genuinely fit for the future and reflecting the world around us. Just look at how our industry has developed and changed over the last 10 years, especially with the development and expansion of digital content, new distribution channels, and new types of advertising. Look at how our members are evolving, offering both broadcast and digital products, building audiences and relationships in ways that were just inconceivable just a few short years ago. And these changes mean there's a golden opportunity for us here as the industry body to update our approach and our positioning. So we obviously can't afford to stand still, and we won't be. Instead, we'll be focusing very clearly on the future. And as part of this, I think there's some key questions we need to ask ourselves. In particular, are we doing everything we can to reflect the excitement and energy in the sector? And are we telling the story as effectively as we can, using the evidence that we have in a way that really resonates with advertisers and our other stakeholders? And do we need to do more to showcase radio's power and its positivity? As we're here today, there's a huge amount going on in the audio sector, and crucially, radio is absolutely at the forefront of this, representing the biggest share of commercial audio listening across all ages. This is just data taken from the industry standard Radar Midas survey, which shows that live radio's share of the overall commercial audio market, that's content where you can actually serve ads around, is around 80%. And what's more, the total size of the commercial audio market is increasing overall, growing the cake and providing more opportunities for everybody. And that's really encouraging because I think it demonstrates how radio and on-demand audio can work together with podcasts and other types of content, expanding choice for audiences and advertisers. And it shows it doesn't need to be a zero-sum game between live radio on the one hand and on-demand audio on the other. Both can grow and they can thrive together. And that's a really important point for us to take on board and to reflect. And there's lots of reasons why this might be the case, many of which comes down to the different roles that radio and on-demand audio play in our lives and for audiences. And that's something that Radiocentre has been thinking quite a lot about recently as part of our next major research project. And Mark Barber will be talking about, a bit more about that later this morning. But radio's success in recent years is also due to a combination of investment in content, new services, talent, and the expansion of choice. Just to take one example, the growth of brand extensions on digital radio has provided an opportunity for stations of all sizes to extend their offering, as well as build audiences around specific eras, genres, and passions. And the most obvious example of this is probably the Absolute Radio Decade stations, with stations like Absolute 80s, but also stations like Capital Dance, building an audience around a passion and a particular genre. But you also see it with the success of independent stations like Boom Radio and even local radio spin-off services. And more recently, we've also seen really significant investment by the radio groups in their own podcasts and digital audio content. The News Agents podcast from Global is a great recent example of this, bringing in Emily Maitlis, John Sopel, and Lewis Goodall from the BBC, along with their production team, providing a really compelling, informative daily news podcast in their own kind of relaxed and informal style. A great listen on the train journey home if, like me, you're now spending more time in the office and commuting. So the great news for advertisers is that commercial audio opportunities are growing, with radio absolutely at its heart. And there's significant and growing evidence of radio's power and effectiveness. We already have more publicly available effectiveness evidence than any other media, and our recent and upcoming research projects will only build to this impressive body of work, even providing tools for advertisers and agencies based on real campaign data. For example, in August, we launched the Radio Planning Optimizer tool, which provides radio planners with a data framework to make smarter investment decisions. A great free resource if you haven't tried it already. And in the words of Steve Taylor, the Chief Strategy Officer of VCCP agency, another great tool from Radiocentre, more tools like this, please, more, something we'll definitely be taking on board. And there's also tons of evidence of radio's power as a force for good, particularly for audiences. And another important part of Radiocentre's remit is to showcase this role to all of our stakeholders, but especially to policymakers. And that can be anything from radio's power and its impact in terms of news, to its value in providing information and companionship, something that's been even more important than ever in the last few years with lockdowns, isolation, and loneliness following the pandemic. We're also immensely proud of the work that Radiocentre's done and coordinated with the Royal Household on raising awareness of mental health issues, taking over the airwaves across BBC and commercial radio for a 1-minute message reaching 20 million people during Mental Health Awareness Week. culminating this year in a really powerful message voiced solely by Their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales, as they are now. And given all of this evidence of radio's effectiveness and its positive role, we also believe it's a priority, it should be a priority, to ensure that it remains freely available and accessible to all, especially online. And that's something we spent quite a lot of time talking to government about over the last year or so, and we'll be talking to the new incoming government about too. And that might sound like a bit of a no-brainer. Of course, radio should be free, it should be accessible and free of interference. And by and large, that does remain the case today due to some great partnerships with companies like Amazon. But while the growth of listening on smart speakers and online creates some fantastic opportunities, it also throws up some big challenges. The gatekeeper role played by Amazon, Google, and the other platforms puts them in an incredibly powerful and potentially dominant position right between radio and its audiences. And this dominance, we think, creates risks for the future, especially if there's no ground rules on how radio is offered, accessed, and commercialised. And as a result, we think it's vital that government brings forward measures to secure radio's position online, something we think can be done simply, effectively, and ultimately in a way that's a win-win for radio, for audiences, and for the platforms. So, what next? How else do we plan to bring together these various strands of effectiveness, innovation, and radio's power? Well, one thing we've kicked off very recently was a review of our brand positioning and our visual identity. As part of this last month, we appointed the creative agency Fold7 to help us reflect some of the themes that I've been talking about this morning, and to really help us get to media decision makers so they can be inspired also by the role that radio can play. And I can't reveal too much about that to you today, but you won't be surprised that the identity that we're developing is going to be based around these three main pillars. Essentially, we have to reflect the fact that radio is effective and needs to be getting heard in that debate around effectiveness. That it's innovative and genuinely evolving in a way that is tuned to the future. And it's positive in terms of the trust it retains and its role for audiences, to the point that it can be described as being the sound of positivity. And these pillars feel like they cover exactly the right ground for us as Radiocentre, as I hope I've demonstrated this morning in that kind of whistle-stop tour of where we're going. And we're looking forward to seeing the results of that process very soon. So that's it from me for now, just a brief run through. I hope that gives you a flavour of what we're going to be covering today and why, how this reflects some of the big issues in radio and audio, and how Radiocentre is going to be evolving as part of this. I'm just going to finish up now by introducing the first of a few short videos, which I also think do a great job of really bringing to life the excitement and the opportunity and the impact of radio and audio in powering the sonic boom and being that sound of positivity in all of our lives. So thanks very much for listening.
The original influencer.
Engaging. A trusted friend.
A highlight of my year at heart is raising money for our charity, Global's Make Some Noise. Every October, the whole of Global comes together to support small charities across the UK. Now, over the years, I've walked and cycled the length and breadth of the country in the name of the charity. And what's really special is being able to meet some of the charities that we support along the way. Now, since 2014, Make Some Noise has raised over £25 million to help improve lives through small charities in communities across the UK. And it just shows the power of radio and that special relationship with our listeners.
The listener's experience of advertising on radio is a critical part of our work to rebuild public trust in advertising more generally. And it's brilliant to see action like Global's Consumer Trust Initiative now being rolled out across all radio ads. This is bound to build on public trust and also reinforce how powerful radio advertising can be.
Radio helps us reach huge audiences, helping us raise millions of pounds, which in turn helps us save and protect lives. We could not do this without the power of radio and the generosity of listeners.
always nice to hear a friendly voice, whether you're in the car, you're stuck in a traffic jam, or you've had a busy day and you're in the kitchen winding down, you're cooking the dinner. Hearing somebody on the radio chatting away with some banter mixed in with some music, it's like your company. It's like hearing your best pal.
So when I'm listening to the radio, I feel connected to presenters and people that are also like me. I become part of their lives in a way, and they also become a part of mine. And it is nice to feel like you're not the only person. There's so many other people out there that you can connect through radio with.
Spontaneous.
Company.
Trustworthy.
Radio is there for me throughout the day.